The wind that came off Blackwater Bay tasted of rust and old wine. From the Tower of the Hand, the city lay below like a field of banked embers. A low glow where the street lamps hung, a wheeze of smoke from the riverfront kills, the hiss and cluck of gulls fighting over refuse on the Black Strand. It was not cold, though Eddard Stark could not stop shivering. The hesitations of his bones had nothing to do with weather. The storm lay in men. He stood with the shutters thrown wide, hands braced on stone worn smooth by the palms of kings long dead. Beyond the mud gate, boats tugged against their moorings and the tide mouthed the pilings as if tasting them. The city never slept. It only changed the way it talked. Tonight it spoke in gossip and careful footsteps. The servants who carried news knew which halls to avoid, which corners might conceal a shadow with a blade. A door scraped behind him. The smell of mint and clean sweat came in with Ser Renly Baratheon, whose boots took no care to soften their sound. Renly loved an audience even when there was only one man to hear him. "You sent for me." Ned turned. Robert's youngest brother was dressed for the dark, or at least some rich man's notion of it. Green turned near to black, stag brooch dimmed by a cloth wrap. He had not shaved, which meant the beard grew in neat and deliberate as if even his whiskers meant to charm. "Our time is done for whispering," Ned said. "The king is dying." Renly smiled as if he tasted sweetness. "Dying still leaves us room to act before he becomes dead." Ned clenched his jaw. "You came to me once with a plan. Take the boy into custody, you said. Send your Northmen to gather the princes, the queen. Hold them gently, gently for their own safety, until a sealed letter can claim what the law already grants. Justice without blood." "Ah!" Renly's eyes warmed. "You've remembered my good sense. I have remembered what happens when men shrink from hard truths. I will not warn her this time." Renly's smile faded by a fraction. "You warned her. I told the queen what I had learned. That was a folly of pity. I believed she would flee." He grimaced, thinking of gold hair lying smooth on a pillow of red silk, of green eyes dismissing him as if he were winter itself come too late to matter. "She did not. You are cruel to yourself, Lord Stark." Renly leaned a hip against the table and tapped the hilt of the thin, fashionable sword he wore. "But cruelty spent on your own name is a cheap expenditure. Spend some on mine and we may both profit." He unfolded a map with a flick of his wrist and weighed the corners with candle holders crusted with drips like frozen honey. "Janos Slynt will do as commanded if his purse grows stout. Loras Tyrell has 50 good men in the city, and more can be rustled up with a word to Mace Tyrell's household. The King's Guard will be bound by oath to protect the king. Do you think Joffrey a king?" Ned's silence served as answer. "Then they must obey the Lord Protector," Renly said. "I will take the boy at dawn with Ser Loras's help. You bring the letter. Surround the throne. Give orders before oaths can confuse the slow." Ned had not slept since the hunt. The notion of rest felt like a story told to children in Winterfell to keep them in their beds. There will be time for it, and the wolves will guard. He had sent men to pry a chain of watchers at every door to the royal chambers. Men he trusted. Not enough. There were never enough men when truth was bare. "Baelish," Ned said, tasting the name as if it might be poison. "Will betray you," Renly answered cheerfully. "He only wonders how best to do it. I will not rely on him." "Good. He will rely on you anyway, to do the honorable thing while he walks behind and takes the purse." Ned looked at the map without truly seeing it. He could smell the river through the window, a slick stink that rose from the mud like a curse. He could hear the crows even now, though the rookery lay a world away. Threads of memory tugged at him. John Aaron's kindly hands turning pages, that weary voice, seed, seed. He wanted to be home, to wake in a room where the cold had a clean edge to it and find Catelyn's head on the pillow. Her hair a dark spill across linen, the sound of her breathing a piece of the night itself. He wanted to see Arya come back from the yard with her braid gone to pieces and a new bruise on her shin, and Sansa's careful hands arranging flowers by a window where snow sketched the air. He wanted too many things. The world did not give so many gifts. "Dawn," he said. "I will have the letter." We will not shed blood unless the queen forces it. Renly inclined his head in a courtly little bow, as if they arranged a hunt and not a new turn in a life of kingdoms. I'll have the Tyrell men ready. Janos Slint will be persuaded. It is fortunate that the city watch finds itself poorly paid this month. Gold tightens tongues. I will not count on them to stand long, Ned said. Your men and mine must take the first risk. Renly's eyes flicked past him toward the darkness that pooled outside the window. You are winter in a man, Eddard Stark. Hard ground underfoot, cold air in the lungs. I do not say that to insult. Keeps crops honest. But there are seeds which only sprout if the soil has a little warmth in it. He straightened and smoothed the map, which did not need smoothing. I will give orders. And if you mean to bring the smith's boy, do it quickly. Gendry, Ned tasted the name. If he found a shard of comfort in this city, it was that there were still names a boy could carry without anyone weighing them for coin. I will send for him. Good. Show them his face and theirs next to it, and let the court draw the lines you have already drawn. Renly paused. And Lord Stark, don't ask Ser Peter to hold your purse while you speak the law. Ned did not promise. Promises broke now, even for men who built their lives on them. When Renly left, the room felt larger and less alive. Ned stood a while longer at the window until the air thickened with damp and he remembered that he ought to be moving. He called for Tomard and Desmond and gave them orders in a trapper's pith. This door, that stair, a man on each corridor leading to the royal apartments. No man in gold cloaks to approach without a Stark man's eyes on him. If the Lannister guards moved in numbers, block, delay, fall back to the Great Hall. He sent Vayen Poole to the kitchens to find sober men with loud voices to ring bells at dawn until the city woke, and not a moment sooner. Then he went to his table and lit another candle and cracked the seal of the letter Robert had dictated with his last wine-furred breath, the wax still soft under the knife. He read the words once more, knowing them already. To my loved and loyal friend Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Guardian of the North, I name you protector of the realm to rule in my stead, until my son Joffrey comes of age. Ned's mouth thinned. The words lay upon parchment like stones half sunk in a river. Familiar, heavy, shaped by old flows of law. He did not intend to cross them. He meant to pull the river itself back to its rightful channel. He half expected a whisper to materialize in the corner where a certain eunuch preferred to appear. None came. Varys knew how not to be present at the wrong times. By the time he left his chambers, night had drawn itself tight about the castle like a hood. The corridor smelled of lamp oil and damp wool and the meat fat that never left these stones. He took his guards and a lantern and went down to the yard where tears of rain polished the flags. His knee ached where it had half healed and healed badly. He ignored it. Tobo Mott's shop lay in the street of steel, halfway between a tavern prudent men avoided and a shrine where the smiths cursed and sang. The ring of hammers still kept late. A forge's day did not end because kings did. When Ned ducked inside, heat wrapped him, a living thing that pressed at his face and hunted through his clothing for skin. Mott's eyes widened when he saw the hands broach. They narrowed when he saw the Stark men bracketing him. The boy was there at the quench, hair damp with sweat, the stubborn bar of his mouth familiar. Gods help him, already familiar. You'll come, Ned said to the boy without preamble. You'll carry no tools and speak to no one on the way. This is king's business. The boy wiped his hands on a rag, watching Ned with that wary animal look boys get when they have grown by dodging hard hands. Am I to be fined? I've done no wrong. I know, Ned told him. That is why I want you. Tobo Mott made a noise in his throat and adjusted his respectable belly as if it defended him. My lord hand, if this is about the helm. It is about hair, Ned said. And gods. They walked back up through the sleeping city with the rain thinning to a sullen mist. Once Ned glanced over his shoulder and saw the boy following, the stubborn mark of his chin pushing through dirt and fear. At his flanks, Tomard and Desmond moved like men who understood they were about to march into a place where law might or might not stand up to swords. In the royal chambers, the king lay with breath shallow as the tide. The boar's tusk had done a thorough, honest job. Wine had finished what the tusk began. Robert's hands, big as hams, lay atop the coverlet like orphan things. The ring had been stripped to shape the seal on the letter. His palms looked naked without its bite. Barristan Selmy stood watch near the door. Older even than his hair made him look, a white statue given eyes. He watched Ned approach, and something in that worn, stern face eased, barely. They had carried each other's respect like a secret for days now. There had been little chance to set it down aloud. "Sir Barristan," Ned said, offering him the letter. "Bear this and your oath with me at dawn." The old knight took the parchment, read, and nodded once. "Oaths are all I have," he said. "I will spend them until I am empty, if the spending is right." Ned glanced at the bed and the man upon it. He wanted to say something to Robert. He had words enough to fill a week, and none of them would change the world a hair's breadth. He settled for laying his fingers a moment on the coverlet near Robert's hand. "I will keep your realm out of the teeth," he whispered to a man who would not hear, "or die trying." When he left, the mist had given itself time and turned back into rain. Dawn came gray and low, dragging a sulky light across the roofs. The bells began to sound at Vayenpool's whisper. Not the high notes of alarm, but a summoning chime that told cooks to prepare long tables and scribes to gather with ink. The great hall filled with courtiers who looked like wet cats, their finery dampened into common cloth, their voices bright with curiosity that always stank of fear. The Iron Throne hunched above them all like a thing that had been tortured into shape and never forgiven it. Steel teeth, steel shadows. Ned stood at the foot of the steps with the letter in his hand and his guards at his back and Ser Barristan at his right shoulder. Janos Slint and a double line of gold cloaks formed a tunnel from the doors. Their faces showed the slackness of men paid in recent memory. Renly had done his work. Cersei came in with her chin raised and her hair still damp, her gown white as lye-washed marble. Joffrey flanked her, a scowl carved into his pretty face like a signature. On their sides came Myrcella, wide-eyed, and Tommen, sleepy and confused. Ser Meryn Trant walked as if the air itself might be an enemy. Ser Boros Blunt heaved like a butcher. Ser Preston Greenfield kept glancing at Joffrey as if to memorize the shape of him for loyalty's sake. The hound stalked behind them, face bare of expression, eyes hunting the room for the worst place to stand. Ned walked forward 3 paces. Renly was nowhere to be seen. Good. The hall had room for only one man's declaration. "My lords and ladies," he said, and the sound went out of the room like breath. "By the will of King Robert Baratheon, with his seal and name, I am protector of the realm until the matter of the succession is settled." Cersei laughed. It was not a bright sound. "How fortunate you are in friendships," she said. "How convenient that letters appear when men need them." Barristan Selmy unfolded the parchment and read it, his voice as plain as salt. He carried. The words landed and stuck. People adjusted their faces to them. Cersei did not. She studied Ned with a look that said he was a piece she had thought cut from one cloth and found to be of another. "And here is the matter of the succession," Ned said, and he felt the old northern steadiness go through him at last like a beam through a house. "It is not my word but the law. It is blood. Robert's heir is not the boy Joffrey. The rightful heir is Lord Stannis Baratheon of Dragonstone." Joffrey's mouth opened. Cersei put a hand on his arm that meant, "Not yet." "How charming," she said, and her eyes glittered. "The wolf grows a taste for letters and then for lies." Ned lifted a hand. Tommard came forward with a wrapped bundle. He set it on a side table and undid the cloth to reveal a thick leather-bound book, old and heavy as duty. Ned opened it, the pages whispering like winter grass. "Here is a record kept by the hand before me. The line of Baratheon back to Orys. Hair as dark as the sea after storm, eyes of blue or gray. In every union where the stag married the lion, or the rose or the falcon, the seed stamped its mark. Black, black, black." His finger tapped the names as he spoke. "All Robert's bastards I have found have his color, but the Queen's children are mine," Cersei said. and for a heartbeat it seemed even she had surprised herself. And then she smiled and spread her hands. Mine and the king's. Blame me if you like for golden hair and green eyes. What crime is it for a mother to give her children beauty? Ned lifted his gaze to the boy. Joffrey's chin lifted a fraction. He tried to look down at a man taller than he was. Bring in the smith's apprentice. They brought Gendry through the press. He stared around as if he had been led into a story he did not want to hear. The hall looked from the boy to the prince as if at a mirror that could not decide which face to show. Joffrey's lips paled. The murmur moved like a slow wind through wheat. Enough, Cersei said, and her voice had the hard, high edge of metal. My son is the king. Step aside, Lord Stark. Give him his throne and his sword and kneel like a good dog. Not until law says so, Ned answered. He did not raise his tone. He did not need to. For the good of the realm, the princes and princess will remain under guard until the matter is judged by council and, if need be, by the faith.
Ser Barristan.
The old knight stepped forward. The white of his cloak gathered the poor light and did not forgive it. For a moment, Ned felt the room shift around him, as if he had moved a stone in a river and the water had to find a new way.
Ser Meryn. Ser Boros. Ser Preston.
Barristan's voice was iron-hammered thin. Your oaths bind you to protect the king. Protect him with obedience to the protector of the realm until the king is lawfully named. Lay down your swords. Ser Meryn's eyes flickered sideways to the queen.
Ser Boros Waloth.
Ser Preston's knuckles went whiter on his hilt. The hound yawned, a terrifyingly casual show of teeth. Janos Slint moved a boot's width and his gold cloaks tightened the line. Their spears made a sound against the flagstones like rain finding a new rhythm. Renly arrived then, not on the dais but at the side of the hall with Loras Tyrell in his shadow and 24 Reach Knights with them. The timing had a showman's polish. Renly did not speak. He only smiled in a way that told the queen he was here to watch and make sure. Cersei measured the room and decided. She took Joffrey's hand and squeezed until the boy jerked. We will not kneel, she said. We will submit to being escorted to our rooms until Robert wakes. We will not suffer insults. We will not be touched. Ned bowed his head a fraction, which was as much as he could do without kneeling to what he had just declared false. Ser Barristan, escort them. Ser Meryn, Ser Boros, Ser Preston, you will secure the royal apartments. The queen and the princes are to be treated gently and kept in all ease. They are not to leave. Any man who draws steel in this hall will be taken into custody and tried for treason. Cersei laughed again. You've grown teeth, wolf. I was born with them, Ned said. They went, the golden procession muted by the Spearguard tunnel. The hound looked at Ned, and for an instant something like dark amusement went through the man's burned half-face. The door swallowed them and the hall exhaled. Renly's gaze found Janos Slint, and Ned saw coin pass between them without moving. Renly turned to Ned and tilted his head an inch. Not a question. An acknowledgement. The first stone had been moved. The water was hunting new banks. When it was done, Varys appeared at last, drifting out from a shadow as if he had been poured from it. My Lord Protector, he purred, as if he had been saying the title for years. Shall I send word to Dragonstone that Lord Stannis is invited to bring his claim and his person, under promise of safe conduct? And to Storm's End, to Lord Renly, who will be so gratified to learn he has been thought of. Renly's brows climbed. Ned did not look at him. Send ravens, he said to the spider. To every great lord. The law stands. We will abide by it. He closed the book and laid his hand on the leather as if it were a plank in a winter river. We have declared the Queen's children under guard for their safety and the realm's. Any work of reprisal will be punished. It is treason. Ser Beric Dondarrion will be commissioned to bring the mountain to justice for his raids upon the riverlands. If Tywin Lannister wishes to argue law, he will do it with words and not with fire. Varys's eyes smiled, but his mouth did not. As you command. Renly waited until the eunuch flowed away and then let a breath out through his teeth. You could have named me king this morning, he said very softly, as if trying the feel of the words. Could I?
Ned replied.
I am not a kingmaker. I am a man with a letter and a realm made thin as ice. Lord Stannis is the rightful heir, whether he has fewer friends than you or not. My dear Lord Stark, Renly said. The dear sounded cold. I should think you would want a king men can smile at. I want a king men can trust, Ned said, and he did not apologize for it. They stared at each other a heartbeat longer. Then Renly's mouth crooked. We may both be disappointed. I will take my leave. He lifted a hand to Loras. The Reachers slipped out like cats. When Ned turned, Peter Baelish stood not far off. A silk smile pressed into his thin face like a fold in a coin. What a morning, he said. The city woke and discovered law after all. Where did you keep it? In your northern snows. I kept it in my blood, Ned said. And I did not ask your help. How wise. Peter's smile did not change. Now help will be all around you, and you must tell it where to go. May I suggest starting with a purse for the gold cloaks? A cheap bribe now prevents an expensive betrayal later. He glanced at the closed doors through which the queen had gone. As for our lioness, be sure your cages are made of more than wooden bars. I am sure of nothing, Ned said, and that honesty felt like a small kindness to himself in a day low on them. Send the money to the city watch if you wish. Send a double portion to any man with a wife and children. How kingly you sound, Baelish murmured. I wonder if the city will let you keep that tone. Ned left him to his wonders. Word flew on raven wings and on common tongues. It reached the Vale at supper time, while a drizzle scribbled at the windows of the Eyrie, and Catelyn Stark sat across from her sister at a table laden with enough food to feed a garrison. Lisa picked at sugared almonds and spoke of assassins as if they hid under every dish. There was a hollowness behind her eyes that Catelyn did not remember from when they were girls, or perhaps had never seen because she had not known to look. You should not have come, Lisa said for the 6th time, pronouncing should as if it were a new word and she wanted to be sure of it. You bring trouble with you. My son is delicate. Catelyn thought of Robb, who had rid himself of delicacy in winter yards with a wooden sword in his hands, and of Bran, who no longer walked but had grown strong in other ways, and of little Rickon, fierce as a knotted pine root. She kept those faces like charcoals in her breast. She eyed her sister and felt sad enough to bite through her tongue. I came because I thought you would help me find justice, she said. For Jon Arryn, for my husband, for the realm. The realm, Lisa said, as if the word smelled foul. The realm always means men coming to take my son from me. The letter came with a clatter of boots and the mutter of a courier who did not understand that one did not speak in the Eyrie unless coaxed. Catelyn unfolded it and read the lines twice, so that her heart could catch up with them. Eddard alive, Eddard protector, the queen and her brood under guard, Stannis summoned, law in the hall like sunlight across a frozen stream. Something came into her breath then that had not been there since the day she watched Eddard ride south. She did not smile. The habit had grown unfamiliar. But in her mind's fingers she touched his face as if it had been saved for her at the last moment from being carved into stone. You see, she said to her sister, justice walks yet. Lisa made a sound like a stone dropping down a well. If your husband has seized the queen, her father will bring war like a noose. Tyrion Lannister, Catelyn said, and the name tasted of many things. If she had had that day on the King's Road to live again, would she lay hands on him? He had laughed in her face, and the laughter had not been cruel, not exactly. We have his son in our sky cells. You have him, Lisa said primly. This is not your house to order. It is the house of a man who taught my husband what honor means, Catelyn said gently. For old love's sake and because fury did not reach a woman who had pulled a castle up around her fears. Jon Arryn would not have kept justice locked in a stone closet. Jon Arryn is dead, Lisa snapped, and her eyes slid away and back. Men's oaths die with them. Catelyn stood. If you will not do it for the realm, do it to keep your son from war. Let the dwarf go. Send him under escort to King's Landing to speak before the council. If Tywin is made to hope for politeness, he might give us time. Time! Lisa clutched her boy as if Catelyn had reached for him. Time is what wolves ask of sheep. Caitlin swallowed. Time is what we need. She did not sleep. At dawn, a wind ran along the mountain shoulders and tugged at cloaks and hair. She walked the narrow stone galleries as if a different house might appear if she turned enough corners. Somewhere in the bowels of the Eyrie, Tyrion Lannister sat in a cell built to break men through sky and fear. She had put him there. She went to the jailer with the breath of her husband's letter still warm inside her and said, "Bring him up." The jailer gaped. "Lady, now." They brought him in chained but somehow not reduced by it. The dwarf wore chains as if they were an expensive belt ill-chosen for the cut of his clothes. He squinted at the light and then at her and smiled. "Is it a different day?" he asked cheerfully. "Or merely a different wife?" "Your faith. Will bring war for you," Caitlin told him. "He may bring it even if I send you free. But if I send you with a message and a guard, he will at least use words before he uses fire. Will you carry a writ of safe conduct and go to the capital to tell your father the queen is under guard and no harm is meant to her or to the princes?" Tyrion blinked. The joke died on his lips, somewhere between his teeth and his tongue. "This is a trap I've not seen before. Let me look for the springs." He studied her face for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I have noticed, Lady Stark, that men who've had their heads crushed seldom think themselves the winners of an argument. I'll take your escort and your words if the alternative is a sky and a long drop." Caitlin nodded and felt something in her shoulders ease. She did not trust Lannisters. She did not trust the world. But she trusted the idea of buying hours with a dangerous coin, and time would grow value if they used it well. News did not go to Casterly Rock by Raven alone. When Tywin Lannister heard that his daughter and grandchildren had been put under guard by a northern wolf with a letter in his fist and an old knight at his shoulder, the air in his tent turned colder without moving. He sat very straight in a chair that had not been made to be moved and said nothing for so long that the men at his table began to prefer the sound of the flies. Jaime lounged, all golden ease and sharpness. "Shall we ask after their diet? It would be a pity if Joff starved. He grows peevish if he misses a meal." Tywin's mouth tightened by the smallest amount. "Your levity is uglier than your reputation," he said. Jaime studied his father with eyes that had learned to be careless and had never forgotten how to be hungry. "The boy is not mine. He is yours. That is the point, isn't it, father? He is my sister's son in law and name and your grandson in truth." "Truth," Tywin said, and the word felt dangerous in his mouth. "Truth is what men admit under torture, most often. We could avoid the demonstration if you instruct your red dog to stop eating the riverlands," Jaime suggested. "It seems the hand has noticed. Gregor serves as a reminder that we are not a house to be used like coins in another man's purse," Tywin said. "He will continue to remind the Riverlords until we have other lessons to offer." He laid his fingers atop a map, flattening the hills with a touch. "We will march to the Golden Tooth and to the Green Fork, and we will take hostages who matter. We will move in strength, and when the boy Tyrion arrives with some request dressed as courtesy, we will have him speak to us with the look of our army between his words." "You expect the imp to walk back into our camp?" Jaime lifted brows. "The last time I saw him, he was boasting to a hedge knight and drinking wine with a sellsword. I expect him to do what men always do," Tywin said. "Live, and he likes living more than he likes most things." He turned slightly and pinned his son with his stare. "You will not ride for King's Landing." "I thought to go kiss my sister's hand through the bars," Jaime said lazily. "You will not," Tywin said. "You will lead the van, and you will teach men to fear us long before they see our banners. Let the hand write letters. Let the old knight stand at his shoulder. We will write our answer in the old ink." Jaime smiled then, not easily, and rolled his wrist as if to loosen a sword that was not yet in his hand. "I've always liked letters I can write with my arm." Back in the city, Ned learned what it meant to govern something larger than his household. The small council sat around a table that seemed always too elegant for the talk it heard. Varys with the hands of a man who had never cut wood or gutted a fish. Peter Baelish turning coins across his knuckles with an idle speed that insulted hunger. Grand Maester Pycelle breathing through hair and age and a lifetime spent near power. Renly came when it suited him, which was less often now, and when he came he carried laughter like a blade no one else could quite see. "We must feed the city if you intend to hold it," Baelish said. "The Stormlands can be generous if asked by the right mouth. The Reach is fat enough to provide for 10 cities, not that they ever have. It would help to put your charming son-in-law somewhere he can be useful." "I have no son-in-law," Ned said. "True," Peter agreed, unfazed. "But the word has already built up a nice little serviceable slope you can push events down. You should send Sansa to Highgarden. The Tyrells like pretty things." "I will not sell my daughter," Ned said. "We are buying bread," Peter said. "Let bread be the only thing you fail to pay for, and see how your gold cloaks do against a hungry city." "Enough," Ned said quietly, and the quiet did more than a shout would have. "Lord Varys, the state of the granaries." Varys spread his hands. "Half full, my lord. The ships from the south are delayed by storms and, politics. The Riverlands." He made a little moo. "They are unhappy with our Red Knights. Men who carry the Lion's banner have been sweepingly inattentive to the rights of farmers. Ser Beric took 40 good men from the city not 4 days ago. I do not advise waiting on him to return with harvests." "Then we will not wait," Ned said. "We will ration by ward. We will thin the beer if we must, though men will complain more loudly of that than of bread. I want a full accounting of every warehouse near the river. Any man who hoards against the crown will be fined. Any who continue after warning will be tried. If you wish to profit, do it by feeding the city at fair price and be known for it. Name those men to me, and their names will be spoken with thanks from the throne." Pycelle wheezed faintly. "Very northern, my lord. The city is not a keep with obedient tenants. The city is many things." Ned held his gaze. "Hungry is the one I mean to prevent. Sansa C. aimed to him that evening with her hair brushed and pinned and her hands folded as if they had been taught to be patient that way. She had been too silent since they had locked the Queen's doors. He saw the whiteness in her knuckles and it frightened him more than any court blade. He had spoken the law this morning and now he had to break a softer, older law, the one that said fathers could always make their daughters safe. "Father," she said, and her voice wanted to be steady and was not. "May I see the Queen?" "No, little bird," he said, and the old endearment escaped before he could pull it back. It had never been meant to be cruel. "Not yet. She is not. I mean, she would not hurt me, would she?" The girl's mouth trembled. "I wrote a letter. I asked the Queen to forgive me for anything I said. The princes and princess. Tommen is only a boy, father. Myrcella is a lady. They must be very frightened." "They are," Ned said, and he recognized himself in the decision he made next. The raw wound of duty wrapped in gentleness to look less like a wound. "I will send you to the Sept to pray for them. You will go with Septa Mordain and 2 guards I trust with my life. You will take no one else. I will write to Winterfell. We will send you home once the roads are safe." Sansa stared at him, and for a moment he saw the child who used to run in the Godswood, and then he saw the girl who had learned court smiles. "Home. Yes," Ned said. She bowed her head so that he would not see what came into her eyes. When she left, Arya slid from the curtain where she had hidden herself, face scowling, hair a chaos. "You can send Sansa home," she announced, "but I'm staying. I want to see the Hound fight someone." "You will see enough of fighting before you are a woman," Ned said, weary to his bones. He wanted to gather her up and set her in Winterfell's kitchens and shout at her for sliding knives into bread dough. He wanted to be a father and not a wall made of letters. "You will go too." Arya's chin put its stubborn line forward. "What if the Queen kills people?" "The Queen will not kill anyone," Ned said. He thought of Cersei's mouth when she smiled. "Not from inside her rooms. She could set them on fire," Arya said matter-of-factly. "She has a face that likes looking at fire." "You have too much of the North in you to belong to this city," he told her, but he kissed her brow. "Go pack. Pack for cold. Pack for long roads. Take the wooden sword and leave the real one beneath your floorboards where only a wolf would think to look. Arya looked at him sharply and then away. I don't know what you mean, she muttered, which meant she did. That night he had 3 ravens returns at once. Renly had slipped from the city with his Tyrell knights, leaving only an insult in the shape of an empty room. Stannis' maester's hand stiff as law itself, acknowledging the invitation and promising, through a tangle of words that believed themselves more important than men, to come to the capital under banners of parley. And Ser Barrick's first dispatch, written in a younger hand by one of his knights, reporting villages burned and small folk hanged and the mountain's men riding like a passing plague. The next day and the next, Ned's days became a grid of duties. Sit in council, sign writs, send bread, accept petitions, refuse bribes and the men who offered them. Once he looked up and saw Varys's half-smile resting at the corner of his vision like a spider that had made itself a home in a wall crack and decided to be visible, just to show it could. Lord Stark, the eunuch murmured that afternoon as Ned stood looking over a list of ships with their manifests. A small thing. His Grace the boy, Joffrey, asks to see his hound. A dog deprived of his master is apt to sulk. I am not his Grace's dog, Sandor Clegane said from where he leaned on a pillar, which made even Varys blink. Ned turned and looked him up and down. The man wore brutality like a garment. It had been sewn to his skin long ago. You have guarded the boy since he could barely walk, Ned said. You may see him. There will be 2 Northmen in the room with you and Ser Barristan, and if you draw steel you will be dead before you can use it. The hound's mouth twisted around something that might have been a smile. If I meant to kill the whelp, I could do it with a stool. If you intended to kill him, you would have done so already, Ned said. Go. Make him less monstrous if you can. Sandor's eyes flicked, surprised into interest. Then he shrugged. Monsters make themselves. But I'll not teach the pup new tricks today. In the Riverlands, where the grass ran bright and the rivers cut patient lines and the houses were built to keep out wind that moved like a living thing in winter, Ser Barrick rode with a handful of men under a banner that had not yet become legend. They were young, most of them, and the ones who were not had the eyes of men who had already spent their first war's share of hope. They came upon a hamlet that smelled of an old meal scraped off an iron pot and saw smoke that drifted in lazy disbelief from 2 charred doorframes. Send 3 ahead, Barrick said, and did not have to say the names. He had been a young knight too recently to forget how to hide a wound from men who looked to him, and the Riverlands would make him old soon enough. They found a woman alive beneath a half-fallen roof, her hair crusted with ash and her eyes full of nothing. Lions, she croaked when they pulled a beam off her legs. Lions with no tails, only fire. When the first arrow thudded into the beam at Barrick's shoulder, it felt almost polite. He laughed a little as he swayed his horse aside. Ah, he said, there you are. The men who charged wore no livery but red cloth tied at arm or leg. The mountain bred his men like dogs and did not teach them heraldry. Steel bit steel. A boy near Barrick dropped his sword upon first blood, as if it had become too heavy for his hand. Barrick turned in the saddle and took a man through the neck, feeling the give of it with a clear part of him that went on knowing how the world worked while the rest of him wanted to shut his eyes. They left 3 of the butchers dead and 2 spitting blood. The woman under the beam died while they fought, and her house creaked like a thing that remembered a tune badly. Take the 2 living back to Lord Piper's holding, Barrick said to his men when he could speak around his breath. Hang one. Send the other back to his friends with a rope mark on his neck and a message. If they wear the red cloth and burn, they'll be hunted like wolves. What message for the hand? A knight asked. Barrick glanced at the smoke. Tell him we only have 2 hands apiece and men here need 10. Stannis Baratheon's fleet came dark across Blackwater Bay like crows returning to a roost. His sails were not gaudy, his masts not taller than another lord's. What declared him was the tightness of his lines and the number of his decks and the stolid efficiency with which men moved about their tasks. Davos Seaworth stood on the deck of the Fury feeling the lick of bay wind in the scars on his hand and thought about onions and gods and men who could not make themselves smile even when the world gave them cause. The hand came to the quay with Ser Barristan and enough soldiers to make the docks mind their manners. Davos watched Ned Stark climb the gangplank and was glad the man had the sense to walk as if he'd done it before, with knees slightly bent and eyes steady, so that the movement of the bay did not rob him of dignity. Stannis waited with his jaw set in its customary line, mouth that rarely considered laughter even in memory. "Lord Stannis," Ned said when they stood alone below the ship's stern castle. Davos remained because Stannis had not told him to go. It was the same as being invited. "If the recognition of law could be a gift, I would say I brought you one. But it is not a gift. It is what we owe." Stannis grunted. For him it was akin to thanks. "You brought your city under control." "Enough," Ned said. "For breathing." "They call you honorable," Stannis said. "They sneer it as if it were a disease. I prefer it to whatever the other men in that chair have been called." He glanced at the dark water as if to see law written on it. "I will not sit in a council with Renly. He has no claim. He has a charming cloak and a squad of peacocks." "Renly has left the city," Ned said. "He may be mustering the Stormlands. He may be courting Highgarden. He is not here." Stannis's mouth made a micro-movement that might have been satisfaction. "Good. The Queen. Under guard. Her children, too. You should have killed her."
Ned froze.
"We do not murder." The "we" contained Winterfell and the man he had been when he followed Robert into a war, and the man he believed still breathed beneath the weight of letters and cities. "We enforce law," Stannis said, unmoved. "We cut rot out before it fouls the whole barrel. She is rot, and the boys she made are too. They are not Baratheons. A headsman's sword would be mercy compared to what they will bring. Her death would split the realm at once," Ned said. "Her father still has teeth. I mean to keep the kingdom from being eaten before we can name you king." Stannis stared, and in his eyes Ned saw a storm that had never learned to be anything else. "You do not name me king," he said. "The law does. I will be crowned quickly and with ceremony. I will have the High Septon's blessing. I will not be kept from what is mine because a woman made a lie and a man wrote an overtender letter." Davos coughed. Stannis glanced at him, which meant, "Speak." Davos rubbed his thumb over the stump scars and tried not to think about onions. "My lord," he said to Stannis, "I've not yet met a wave that changed because a man told it how to go." Stannis snorted. "Waves are for sailors. Kings too," Davos said. "Only your boat is bigger." Ned's mouth quirked despite himself. "Lord Stannis," he said, "I am not your enemy. You will not become my friend by sparing mine," Stannis answered, meaning Cersei. "I will not become your enemy by refusing to slaughter children," Ned said, meaning Tommen and Myrcella. He wished that saying their names to this man would make them real inside him and not just a pair of coins people haggled over. "I will keep them unharmed until law decides their fate. Give me your oath you will not move on the city with steel. We will hold a council and a great court, and there we will prove the boy Joffrey's illegitimacy." "You would parade it like a festival," Stannis said with contempt. "I would make it public enough that men think twice before dying to deny it," Ned replied. "Your right is strong enough to bear the weight of ceremony." They stared at each other, two men who had grown into hard shapes around their principles like trees grown through iron hoops. "Very well," Stannis said at last. "I will not attack. Not yet. But if you balk—" "I do not balk," Ned said, and knew it for truth and for a promise that would cost him sleep. When he returned to the Red Keep, Peter Baelish appeared at his elbow. It was one of the man's small talents, a way of stepping out of air smelling faintly of apple soap and drifted coin. "Stannis is a stiff old worm," Peter said airily. "He will tie your city in knots with his virtue." Renly would have untied them with a smile, and if the knots held he'd have found the one with the prettiest color and kept it for a sash. "Renly would have burned the city if it did not like his sash," Ned said. "We all burn cities," Peter answered. "Some of us use candles on ledgers. You burn them whether there's a reason or not." "I am my own reason," Peter said, and he smiled. "How will you hold the Queen, Stark? If you bring her to trial, she will demand a trial by combat, and then whom do you send against her champion?" "Bah! Riston is old and the hound is hers. The Kingsguard who are not fools because they are hers. The faith will sit in judgment, Ned said. This is a matter of marriage vows and the rights of succession. It touches the 7. Oh, very pretty. Peter looked pleased by the thought of pretty things being dragged into the light and made to squeal. Do you imagine the High Septon's belly is full of justice? You will need to feed it with something that tastes like safety. Then we will promise safety, Ned said. Be sure you can deliver it. Peter reached to brush imaginary dust from Ned's shoulder. The Queen has friends in places her father's coin cannot reach. There are places even gold fears to go. He slipped away. Ned watched him pass a squire carrying a basket of quills, and the boy nearly dropped them for the shock of seeing such a fine lord. Ned wondered how many quills had signed away more men than any sword. That night, before the Godswood's little poor fountain and its tired trees, Ned knelt and told the weirwood nothing because he did not know what to say. The face hacked into the pale bark stared back with weeping sap and the old grief that trees wore. He tried to pray, and the words felt like objects he had taken from long storage and not oiled often enough. He spoke anyway until his knees hurt and the damp crept up his bones. "Father," a voice said behind him. He turned. Arya stood with her hands jammed into a boy's jerkins and a look that tried to be bold and succeeded. "You were not going to say farewell," she accused. "I was," he said, and it was true. He had simply not lived enough days in this one to arrive at that hour. "I will walk you to the sept in the morning and then to the carts." "I don't like the sept," Arya said. "It smells of sweet things that make my teeth hurt." "It smells of clean," Ned said. "You could stand nearer to it." She scowled at the carved face and then at him. "I'll go home and learn how to sew until my fingers bleed if you promise me something." He sighed, because promises were the currency he had been forbidden to spend cheaply, and his daughter asked to trade with him like a man in the market. "What?" "Teach me to see the trap," she said. "You told the Queen once and it was a trap. This time you didn't and it was still a trap for somebody else. There are traps everywhere, aren't there?" "Yes," Ned said. "Sometimes you step in the least sharp one and call it wisdom." He pulled her to him, and she allowed it as if granting a boon. He smelled Winterfell in her hair for a moment and wondered if that was only memory. "I will send Sirio's letters north," he told her. "You will keep practicing. You will not forget who you are." "I'm a Stark," she said into his chest. "You are," he said. "Now run before I remember you are still small enough to be carried and do it." She thumped him for that and fled. In King's Landing, word spread more quickly than bread. The Tyrell's ships began to appear on the horizon like coins someone kept dropping and then stealing back. Renly's banners sprouted in the Stormlands. The Faith, sensing a festival of law and appetites to feed, began to oil its bells. The High Septon sent a message, half hidden beneath piety, asking whether a contribution to the orphans' feast might incline the council's hearts toward a certain chapel's repairs. Ned moved through it all as if wading in a river that wanted to hurry him along and had to settle for wetting his clothes. Tyrion Lannister's party arrived at the Rosby Gate under escort by a half-dozen of Lisa Arryn's blue-cloaked guardsmen, who looked as if they might bolt at a hawk's shadow. The dwarf rode a shaggy pony with a look of amusement he had clearly made part of his traveling kit. He dismounted with a grunt and bowed as low as his size made convenient. "My Lord Protector," he said, "you have my gratitude for rescuing me from a chilly accommodation. Sky makes a poor blanket. You may express your thanks by persuading your father not to put villages to the torch," Ned said. "Oh, I never persuade my father," Tyrion said cheerfully. "I offer my counsel and he pretends to consider it, and then we both do as he wanted at the start. It is the Lannister way. You must have noticed. We are not here to trade jokes," Ned said, but he could not dislike the man. He wondered if that was a failing or a virtue. "You will tell him that the Queen has been well treated, that we intend to prove the matter of her children's parentage in open court before the Faith." "Ah," Tyrion said, "a court. You object." Varys purred from somewhere like the sound of silk. He had appeared to greet Tyrion as well. a cat slipping to greet a much larger cat. "I agree," Tyrion said, and his grin showed a good deal of bone. "A court is one of my favorite arenas. You should begin charging admission." "Men will pay," Peter said, not far away. "In fear, in hope, in coin, in flesh. The city is already selling seats in its heads." "Send your message, Lord Tyrion," Ned said, "and tell your father that if he marches, he will march into a kingdom that sees him as a brigand and not a lord." Tyrion's eyes narrowed with a quick intelligence that did not find insult in true statements. "If I say that," he said, "my father will smile with only the corner of his mouth he uses for disdain and will ask if the city is eating. If I answer yes, he will ask if the gold cloaks are paid. If I answer no, he will ask whether candles still burn in the queen's rooms. He counts debts differently than other men." "Then tell him this," Ned said. "If he sends Gregor Clegane into the Riverlands again, I will name him outlaw and strip him of his lands by decree of the council." "Ah," Tyrion said softly, "you are Winter. You intend to make the hills as bare as your honor." "I intend to make the law something men can stand on," Ned said, "even if it hurts." Tyrion's look held a respect that had no been there when they started. "I'll carry your ice to my father and see whether it melts or cuts." Before the court could be called, the city had to be prepared to see. Carpenters were brought to the September of Baelor to raise platforms for the faith and the council. The High Septon insisted on an additional dais for his handmaidens of the Mother. Peter Baelish created a separate set of benches for foreign merchants at a price that made them cry in 3 languages. The commons muttered in the shadow of the statues. They had not been asked to watch great men tasked with telling them what was true since the last time anyone remembered. On the morning appointed, bells have the air. The sky had the color of pewter rubbed thin by many hands. Ned dressed in gray and did not put a jewel on his body. Barristan Selmy wore his white cloak, which had seen more truths than any man's voice. The queen came with her hair bound with a circlet, not so much a crown as a reminder of one. Joffrey wore anger like armor. Myrcella tried to be brave. Tommen looked as if he might sleep where he stood. They were placed to one side, a little separate, as if the very air wished to keep them from the holy. The High Septon waddled into his place with mincing solemnity. He blessed this and invoked that and spoke with a voice like butter melting slowly, and at last he made the sign that told men to start. Pycelle droned through genealogies until men's eyes glazed. Ned asked for the book and read, and he did not read the words as if they were spells. He read them as if they were stones he set in a wall, each where it had to be. He brought in the boy from the forge and Tobo Mott, and a serving maid who had once been given a purse by a fat man with a black beard and was not too frightened of herself to forget his name. He did not bring Gendry near the queen. He had learned not to let wolves and fawns share fences. Cersei watched and smiled and then did not smile. When Ned had finished and the murmurs had filled the September to the beams, the High Septon cleared his throat until men looked and said, "The faith does not judge parentage, but it does judge marriage vows. If vows were broken and used to deceive a realm, the cost must be paid in sackcloth." Cersei stood then, and her voice cut clean. "I will not wear sackcloth," she said. "I will not have my children's names stripped to please a man who didn't know how to love his king when he had him. I will not kneel to my husband's stiff-necked brother. Do what you like to me, wolf. I raised your girls like my own, and this is how you repay me." Sansa, in the nave with Septa Mordane, made a sound and bit it back. Arya scowled and leaned forward as if she could change the tilt of the world with her body. Ned spoke without anger. "You raised my daughter to fear you," he said. "If you admit your guilt here and now, I will send you to the rock with your father, with your children, unhurt and with guards of my own selection. You will not return to court. The realm will be spared a war fought for a lie. Swear by the 7. Swear by your frozen trees," Cersei spat. "I will not." "Then we will name the truth without your oath," Ned said and gave the sign. It was done then. The High Septon pronounced the boy Joffrey born of incest and therefore illegitimate, and rechristened him in the eyes of the faith not as prince but as Lord Joffrey Waters, a name that tasted of salt. Men gasped, and a few laughed, and some in the benches where the commons sat made fists without names on their knuckles. The queen stood like a blade drawn and would not be sheathed by words. Joffrey's face went pale and then red and then pallid again, like a fever. The hound had to put a hand on his shoulder to keep him from leaping forward. "By decree of the council," Ned said, the words falling like winter hail. "Lord Stannis Baratheon is named King of the Seven Kingdoms until law or death should declare otherwise." The bells pealed again, and if there was joy in the note, it hid itself well. Afterwards, Cersei said nothing as they led her away. In the carriage, she turned her head and looked at Sansa as the girl stood with Septa Mordain in the sept yard, and her expression was something Ned could not name and did not want to. Pity? No, not pity. Calculation hurt thin with regret. The carriage moved and the guards went with it, and the city exhaled a long sigh that sounded like a rope drawn over rough wood. That night, a fire started in a wine shop on the Street of the Sisters. It leapt across a narrow lane and ate a stable and 3 houses before the watch, and a score of dockside men got it under control. Someone said they saw a man in a red cloak run laughing into the dark. Someone else had seen no such thing and wouldn't swear to it. In the Stormlands, Renly Baratheon stood in a hall hung with stag banners and Tyrell roses and laughed out loud when the raven told him his brother had been crowned. "By a northerner," he said, delighted. "I do love when law is a ladder other men stand upon to reach the roof I was born for." Mace Tyrell laughed too, because Renly did and because laughter filled rooms comfortably. Loras leaned against a pillar and rolled his eyes. "We'll have to go to war without you tiring your jaw," he said. "I have saved my wittiest remarks for Stannis' coronation feast," Renly said, "assuming he holds one. He will likely throw a bowl of clams at the assembled lords and call it done. Then we will give the realm a feast worth the name," Mace boomed. "We will give them a young king they can adore." Renly patted his arm with a fond insolence. "You will give me your bannermen, and I will give the realm a kind of king. Whether they adore him will be their mistake to make." South and west, Tywin Lannister's army moved. Villages hid what little they had. River lords raised men and sharpened scythes. The Blackfish took a mapping table and spoke with his sister's daughter as if she were both his liege and his blood, which she was. Hoster Tully coughed blood into a handkerchief when no one watched. Catelyn wrote a letter to Eddard and wrote another and threw that one into the fire. In the far north, at a wall of ice where wind sang like knives, Jon Snow learned from a raven that his father lived and the queen had been taken and a king named who was not a boy with a lion's mouth. He felt something move in him and could not give it a name because everything had names here already. Oath, watch, brother, wall. He held the parchment and thought of Winterfell as a place he had finally learned to stop imagining at night. Came back now, whole and poisonous as desire. "Your face has news," Samwell Tarly ventured, peering at him as if news were a bruise. "My father is still breathing," Jon said, "and the world has found a new way to be itself." "Good," Sam said automatically, because some words could be neither wrong nor right and good was one of them. Then he thought, "Is it?" Jon folded the parchment small and put it into his belt. "We will go ranging soon," he said. "And there are things in the wood that do not kneel to kings. That will be news enough." He was right. Far away in a place no raven wrote about, a woman walked into a fire and did not die, and something that had not breathed in living memory drew breath, but that belonged to another tale and would come like a storm when men had finished arguing about their smaller wins. King Stannis entered the city with few banners and fewer smiles. He stood in the great hall beneath the Iron Throne, and the light from the high windows cut his face into hard plains. He did not climb the throne that day. He looked at it as if a man might look at a wolf caught in a trap. Relieved, pitying, unable to feel anything like affection. "Your Grace," Ned said, and the word left his mouth strangely, as if his teeth had had to move to fit it through. He knelt, and when he rose, Ser Barristan Selmy had already bent the head that had once bowed only to mad kings and good ones. "We will set this to right," Stannis said. "We will unhand the Rock's daughter, when it can be done without war. We will send the lion's cubs away to their great orange cave in the west and close the door on them. We will feed the city." We will pay the men who carry spears. We will name men who told lies and make them tell the truth. We will. There was a commotion at the door, which never boded anything but ill. Sir Lancel Lannister, bone-white and far too young for the things he had seen, burst into the hall with his hair in disorder and his face the color of old bread. "My lord, your grace," he corrected, stumbling. "The queen." Ned's stomach knew before his head. "What? Her room," Lancel panted. "The warders were dead. The lady's maid, my cousin." He swallowed and made a wreck of the gesture. "They are gone. The queen, the children, the hound." Ned's blood went cold and angry at once. He saw Peter Baelish standing very still with the kind of stillness men who loved games used when they wanted to watch a piece they had not moved move. He saw Varys's eyelids lower and lift once in what might have been the only prayer he allowed himself. "Shut the gates," Stannis said in a voice that made men do things. "Shut the city. Search every bolt hole from the mud gate to the king's own privy." They found 3 dead men in livery and 1 woman with her throat cut to a clean line and 1 pried window where a bar had been sawed almost through and replaced. They found the place where a rope had been lowered and marks on stone where shoes had abraded over centuries in previous escapes and solutions. An old boatman swore he had seen a barge with heavy canvas and no debt to any house slip out before dawn. The bay held many boats. Men searched them, but the bay also held fog and men who could be paid to forget. "Varys," Stannis said when they had gathered again in the map room, "your little birds saw something. They heard a flap of wings," Varys said, sorrowful. "But one wing sounds like another when it is dark." Stannis's head turned with a slow inevitability and found Ned's. "You kept them to spare us a war." "I kept them because it was right," Ned said, and for the first time since the hunt he felt the ache of doubt in his ribs. It hurt like a cough he could not take because it would splinter him. "It has bought us war anyway," Stannis said. "Now we will fight it without the ounce of safety their bodies bought. I will have men's skulls for this. I will have the hounds broken and set on a spike." "You will have the truth," Ned said, hurting and furious with himself and with a city that allowed rats to breed in its palace walls. There were men paid. There were locks that answered to more keys than any honest room ought. "We will find who made the hiding places." Peter Baelish smiled, almost sad. "Rats live off castles," he said, "not the other way around." "Find the men," Stannis said, and the sentence had more in it than the words. "Find the men who let this happen. Find the men who profited. Find the men who made it likely. Find the men to blame." They did not find Cersei in the city. Word came a week later on a ragged sail from a fisherman who swore by all 7 gods in as many temples as would let him kneel that he had seen a galley slip around Dragonstone in fog, hugging the black rocks like a lover, making for the west on a wind that should have died. If it was true or a story bought with a small sack of silver, it served House Lannister in equal measure. The queen had become a story, and stories can ride faster than armies. From that day forward, the realm had a king with a mouth made for judgments and a hand who learned to hold the city's hunger in one fist and its temper in the other, and a lion in the hills, and a younger brother in the south with roses and songs ready like banners. In the Riverlands, men who had ridden to bring one rogue lord to heel found themselves making something new out of oaths and hunger. They would call it a brotherhood later because names make men feel less alone. Ned learned to sleep an hour at a time and to wake without moving too quickly because someone might be waiting to watch him move. He wrote to Robb and told him to hold the north firm and keep away from the neck and send no men south. And Robb obeyed because obedience was a thing boys carried like a badge in the first year of their manhood. Catelyn rode between Riverrun and King's Landing like a woman trying to keep a thread taut across a chasm. Stannis sat on the Iron Throne and ruled with harsh grace, and the throne seemed to accept him as if the metal had been waiting for a man who would not flinch at its spikes. The city learned to say "Your Grace" as if it had always meant Stannis when it added the words. Then Jaime Lannister struck like a blade in failing light at the Golden Tooth, and songs later would make him more gallant or more monstrous, but the truth in the moment was this. He rode hard and with men who knew how to use horse and ground and river, and he carved a clean wound in the Tully line. Edmure bled pride and men into the grass. The blackfish broke his sword and took another and brought a handful out, cursing and promising to hell with politeness. Tywin measured the weight of the blow and smiled with only that corner and then with his whole mouth. He had wanted this. A wound that would demand men and attention and drag Stannis' stare from the west back to the center. War does not need a boy on a throne. It can rear its head when any man refuses to kneel. Ned stood over the map and looked at lines that were men and names that were lives and thought of Winterfell, where the lines were old stone and the names were carved into weirwood bark. He felt very tired. The city breathed around him, and though he had not learned to love it, he had learned to keep it alive, which is another form of love when old gods hold the measure. "You could have gone home," Peter Baelish murmured, as if reading some other man's thoughts and dressing them in words. He had a way of arriving when a man's hand hovered over his own shoulder. "You could have let the lions keep their cub upon the throne and let him chew on the crown until his teeth broke." "I could have thrown my honor to the crows," Ned said. "But I needed it to build with." "Ah," Peter said, and his smile was the exact size of its own insincerity. "We all build. Some of us build ladders out of other men's harm. Some of us build walls out of our own. One keeps men from falling, the other keeps men out," Ned said. "Tell me, which do you climb more often?" Peter spread his hands. "I never climb. I leap. Then expect gravity," Ned said. He went to the window and looked out over the city, which smelled that night of apple tarts and sewage and river wind and the oil lamps of women who had learned where not to wait. He thought of the Queen moving through some small western cove with the hound's scowl for a shield and imagined the shape of the cage she would build for herself when she reached a castle that could hold one. He thought of Stannis sleeping little and waking early and feeding on the bitter bread of rightness. He thought of Renly, who would arrive with harp strings and a red smile and a sword he let other men swing. He thought of Robb reading his letter and setting his jaw, and of Arya scowling at a sept she did not want and Sansa praying for boys who had never learned what prayers cost. He thought of winter. It would come across all this sooner than they thought. And what would their letters mean then? What would the law mean when white things moved in forests and cold ate bread and queen's children and honor alike? He did not know. He knew only that he would make a place where men could stand until the wind took its next breath. The bells rang again. The city changed the way it talked. Outside, Blackwater Bay licked its piers. Inside, men wrote letters that could not stop war and made decisions that could. In a far field, Jaime Lannister laughed riding into dusk. In a cold fort where the world ended, a boy named Snow shouldered a pack and walked toward the trees with his mouth full of breath and a promise on it. In a tent that smelled of horses and old iron, Tywin Lannister slept with a map beside his bed and dreamed of rock. In a tower across an ocean, a girl with silver hair listened to the crackle of something new and shook ash out of her braids. The realm did what it always did. It moved under the weight of choices until the choices became parts of it and no longer felt like weight at all. Ned Stark told himself that was how men lived. By carrying one more thing than they wanted to, because someone had to, until they discovered their arms had grown strong enough. He moved the candle closer to the map and bent his head to see.